The following content has been provided by New St. Andrews College in Moscow, Idaho. For more information, visit us online at nsa.edu.
Hear the world calling, but son, don't you listen. They're only trying to drag you back into prison, that's right.
Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
And we've met again. It's What Have You back at you.
Back at you.
It's your turn to listen to another What Have You.
Mm-hmm. And
Becca.
my mouth is full because Rachel brought her plate of roasted vegetables into the car.
They were good. I just got full, so
She
now
got
Becca's
full, so
eating
now
the rest of them.
I'm like snitching off of the leftovers here.
Nobody minds.
They're
Everybody
good.
wants you to be
They're
eating
good.
roasted squash.
I actually
while
feel
we
like
talk.
you need to tell me about this because this is a really yummy fall lunch that I am clearly not incorporating in my life.
This was the last of the things I had in my house. So this was a roasted, it's butternut squash cubed and red onion sliced. And then I had a can of San Marzano tomatoes that I chopped up a little bit and threw in there.
That
and
helps.
a
It's
can
really
of
yummy.
artichoke hearts that are water preserved artichoke hearts. And then some kale. And
It's good.
then feta.
I'm switching to your fork because I'm using my fingers, but it's kind of starting
Yeah.
to... I'm
The
just
sound
gonna-
effects of Becca tasting my roasted
I'm
veg.
just-
It's just pepper and salt on roasted
Do you not have
veggies.
olive oil or anything?
No, I use the spray oil.
Mm.
That's referencing back once more to Weight Watchers. I'm sure it would be more
This is a good
delicious
lunch.
with a load of olive oil drizzled all over it,
Yeah.
but it would be more full
But
of
there's
Weight Watcher
no, like,
points.
garlic or anything happening?
No.
It's yum.
Well, the
It's really
onion.
good.
The onion is probably, the red onion is probably what you're tasting.
Yeah, it's
There's that. Yeah. Anyways, that's what I had for lunch, and that's what Becca's now having as
I'm
lunch.
having it for lunch.
She's
Yeah.
So, Becca, what have you been doing?
Me, I have been still trying to tile my entryway, but I have a big praise report that it's coming along and looking awesome.
Oh, that's good.
I know, I have the old border done, and then the center is those tiny little hex tiles. So Saturday was all about like laying them all out and figuring out what design I'm going to do in the central bit.
It's like those, whatever they are, math manipulatives for children.
Oh my word.
The
It's
little
so,
boxes and boxes of tiles. Like, what shapes
is
could you make?
so mathy, this thing. It is just
Something else that's
outrageous.
super mathy in my life is the weaving, and I because it's it's a lot more of that kind of thing. You know, it's not as, it's like a more disciplined kind of art. I don't know. It's artistic, but it's more
there's
math oriented.
Well-
If you're not paying attention to the maths.
One time
It
years
won't
ago,
pan out for
we
you.
were redoing our kitchen, which seems like I'm in a constant state in life of redoing the kitchen, but not having it done. But anyway, those are cute jeans.
Thanks.
I like them. Anyway,
It's be-
speaking of math, look at how that would have been complicated to make those pleats. Anyway, my point
Please,
here
be real.
is we're redoing.
You just made it seem like I'm wearing
Pleated
really
pants.
complicated pleated pants.
They are complicated pleated pants, but the pleats are on her knee.
It's the knee. They're like those jeans that have kind of it's like motocross kind of a look. Except for, I sort of like that, but I never like it when it's like fake leather or something
No,
in
it's
it.
cute,
But
though.
this is just the denim.
No,
has
I like it. Anyway, but on the math thing though, we're redoing the kitchen, and I was designing the hood to go over the stove, and I needed to tell Ben, he was going to build it for me, what angles I wanted.
Man.
And I remember sitting there going like, I learned this, I will figure it out.
I
and
will remember.
I had to go down the
Tangent,
block.
secant, cosine,
No,
sine, 3.14159.
3 to the x, the x, the x.
XDX, we think trig class is the best. And it's only been, what,
I know.
20-something years,
But I
and we
was
can
like-
both still do that?
I was like, I can do Sokotoa. Yes, I
Oh,
can.
I can?
So
Okay, wait.
but I had to go.
I would have a rough sledding trying to remember. It's over the hypotenuse.
Is opposite over hypotenuse.
Co-
Cosine is opposite over
over-
hypotenuse and
No, wait.
Yeah.
So,
Adjacent
toa,
over
ka. Yeah,
so
because
adjacent over
tangent is
hypotenuse.
opposite over
adjacent.
adjacent.
Yeah. So anyway,
Phew!
thankfully we still can do that.
No, I
But-
doubt I can.
I had to go borrow a scientific calculator from a friend down the block. And I came back and I figured it out and I was like, trig class paid off because that hood came out the right angle because it was kind of, it went out to the sides, left and right, as they choke on your butternut squash. It went out left and right, but it also sloped out towards you from the wall. So that was just a complicated angle there at the corners. Like what?
Yeah, because it was
And
angling
Ben's like,
every direction.
tell me what angle I'm putting the table or the chop saw at when
You're
I
like,
build
I
this
gotta
frame.
borrow the calculators.
And I'm like,
I really
scientific calculator.
enjoyed trig. Like trig,
Me
I
too.
loved, but I'm way out of practice with it,
Oh,
so it's
I'm-
not well.
yeah, no,
I'm
I'm
actually
terrible at it.
beyond out of practice.
But I felt like it came up a lot when I was doing pattern design. You'd really channel math there too. But actually, this brings me to what I promised we would talk about last week.
Perfect. It's almost like we planned it, but we
Seamless.
didn't. Yeah.
We did not, no.
So tell us, what did you
Okay.
plan to talk about?
Well, I think last time we were talking about maybe articles that you might read on the internet and then get aggrieved at. You know, we were talking about that. And I had bumped into one that... bless you.
Pardon.
I had bumped into one that just I didn't care for. And it was because, and of course, when something ruffles me, I have to sit there and try and articulate, okay, what was it exactly that bugged me about that? And is that just my problem? Or do I have a good point here? And the article, I don't remember all the details now, but it was all about why women do not need an education per se. Like, formal education is not necessary, and it in fact makes you worse as a wife and mother because it probably is going to make you
What is it
into
going
a
to do? Like
feminist.
stir up some ungodly emotions about the maths?
No, it's going to make you into a feminist, which will make you unsubmissive.
But it's almost like if a woman were to really enjoy part of God's creation that we're obviously given, that would tempt her out of her lawful place, which is as straight up unbiblical.
But it's also like your biblical place that you need to stay. If you had brains, you wouldn't stay there, so you better stay there. Like, it's weird.
It's horrible.
It's weird. But anyway, the thing that, there was this one little throwaway comment about it, about saying women don't need a formal education to fulfill the biblical command of being submissive wives with clean and tidy homes. And so here's what I think after thinking about this and trying to articulate what it was that bothered me, because the thing is scripture does say women are to be keepers at home. And if
I want to throw one thing in here just as an aside, is that even though we think that that's a sad place to be, where people are saying women should just be at home with no other education or no whatever, that's still, we think of that as a sad version of our people. And I still think way more joyful than the women who think I don't need God if I have my career and my social life, which is what most of the feminists are doing. So our criticisms of those people is still the criticisms of family, and that we're saying at least you're acknowledging the Bible's authority in your life.
Exactly, and that's good. But
we're not ashamed of them in that sense. We're sorry for them.
The thing that was bugging me was the line about the tidy home, because I was like, here's the thing.
Becca, why would that bother you?
Yeah.
And why would that bother me? Why would that give us a little...
And see, here's the thing. You always have to check your motives, because it's like, am I just being annoyed because my house isn't tidy, so I don't like it when somebody says
about
that?
being tidy.
And the thing is, my house is, oh my gosh, because I have no kitchen cabinet, so you can only imagine where things are there. Anyway, you know.
I'll tell you the dark news about my house untidiness. Last night when we did the great cleanup, I was like, get me the vacuum. And the vacuum prong had fallen off of the plug.
Oh.
I was like, what? So we are vacuum free, and it's been about 27 minutes, and I'm about to die.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay.
But anyway, the point is like, yeah, we're under construction. We've got a lot going. I'm teaching. I'm doing a bunch of stuff. So, yep, there are piles of things on the basement stairs that really shouldn't be there. Like, they really should have gotten put away. Something somewhere is not cool about that.
Right.
So, but I'm saying, you don't want to react to something defensively.
Yeah.
And not think it through. So I'm like, okay, here's my question. The Bible does say women are to be keepers at home, which means you really should take that seriously. But does it actually say that you must have a tidy home? And this is why I think I was being really chapped about this. Is that is, I think, a weird anachronistic thing that comes from, like, our conception of Americana and suburbia. And I don't think it actually comes from a biblical worldview. So here's what I mean by it. If you think about, for most of human history, the way industry worked is that people had their business at their home, right? Mm-hmm. So still,
husbands and
farmers
wives were more all in on the same
everybody's
job.
all in. So if a blacksmith is a blacksmith, it's happening at his house, or he's living near his shop, or like that's traditionally how life tended to go, right? And I just was trying to think, like, okay, the Proverbs 31 woman is obviously centered around her home. She's industrious, she's working, but do I picture her with neatly organized bins with every little thing in its place and stuff? Or do you picture her as probably having the flax drying all over the roof and having the, like a place where a lot of work was happening, like productive work? And so I think that the idea about tidiness comes from a moment in history where after the Industrial Revolution, work and home got separated more, where it was
right,
like the husband would
now
go to the office,
yeah,
right? So he would go to the factory, or he would go to the office, and the place of commerce moved away from the home, which I do not think is a bad thing. But I do think that it meant that home became weirdly siphoned off as a place of leisure, and the woman stayed there, and the work that has sawdust and mess and productivity, that got taken somewhere else. And then the woman stayed at home where you're supposed to be restful.
Well, I would say that I have met a lot of women who won't get into learning new things or trying something because it would make a mess, or it would interrupt their routine that keeps everything totally in perfect columns. But it's weird because I just feel like...
I think that if you... I have nothing against tidiness, because, to be honest, I'm on, like, the giant quest, the perennial quest for some tidiness. So I'm not against that. But I think that if you separate tidiness from productivity, then that's really dangerous.
Yes.
Because...
Yeah, like, if it's like, just get this into a freeze. Like, let's just get this somewhere.
And the thing is, we all understand,
it's still really, really hard for me to fathom, because I think my house, there's so much traffic, and I know it is the kind of things that we do, so it's true, but it's not like my house is ever staying put anywhere.
But see, this is my thing, is that, like, if you separate tidiness from productivity and you actually prioritize the tidiness, the productivity will fall off. Like, you're not totally accomplishing anything except the tidiness itself. Right. And the thing is that we all know that a tidy workplace is the most productive workplace. If you're trying to be productive and you don't know where anything is, that cuts into your productivity. So I'm not saying that tidiness is bad, but I think what we've done, like, when you look at, like, okay, the biblical injunction to be keepers at home, I don't think that means keep everything tidy at home. I think it means be productive at home.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, be productive around the home.
Keepers is probably it's just someone is tending it. Like, it's a garden. Yeah. Like, meaning someone is there aware of what needs to be planted when and how to do, like, what are we doing? We're going to harvest this now. Like, we're going to plant this now. We're going to do this now.
Take ownership of this. But I think that we then read it as suburban America, where you just have to be at home and keep things, like, tidy and clean, and that's it. That's the end of it. And I just think we should maybe be a little bit more broad. Maybe
have a bigger idea about what we wanted.
Yeah, and I'm not, like I said, I think that we shouldn't separate tidiness and productivity. I think that that's the problem. And so I think that sometimes the conservatives
It's a good point. You speak a truth about it.
Well, it's like the conservatives tend, like, if they want women to stay at home and just have the crock pot going and the bins are labeled, then there's it's prioritizing the tidiness, and then you've got the feminists who prioritize the productivity. Like, I have to go do something productive.
I want to say something, because it's just reminding me of Marie Kondo and the whole life cleaning magic of tidying up. That one of the things that's so obviously wrong in her world is this idea that only things that are bringing you joy ought to be near
Have a
you.
place.
No, like it's okay to get rid of anything that's not bringing you joy. And it's funny because you think there's nothing about hold this item and think, is this part of my duty?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, or is this something I ought to do for someone? Or is this a thing? And she's writing from a totally different planet and without children and without Christ. So it's not like I'm blaming her for not thinking of this. But if you're a Christian woman and you're thinking, in my house, I want everything to be so streamlined so that nothing but the things that give me pleasure or joy are around me, instead of thinking, it's
okay,
like,
I
think
think
what
about
I'm
this
trying
too,
to say is it's almost like back to the garden analogy. It's almost like saying I only want things around my garden that are ready to harvest and beautiful. And I'm not going to do anything with the weeding or with the manure.
Here's the thing though. I was thinking about this the other day too, is I do think that women, well, we have obviously a large preoccupation with beauty in general. Beauty in the home, personally.
Beauty in the heart of the beholder. The eye. It's not even in the heart.
No,
I'm joking about that. That's a dumb.
Yeah,
I always think.
But
it's
the
dumb.
thing is that like that's a big part of what women want to channel. We want to make, and it can be done obediently or disobediently, right? So the desire to make a beautiful home. What is the point of it? And I think the Marie Kondo approach is, it is
my
to make
pleasure,
me happy.
Yeah.
It is all about me. And you can also do it where it's like, I am doing it to impress other people
and
in
that
order
makes me
that
happy.
they look at me.
But it also makes me happy when other people look
Other
at
people,
me.
it brings me joy when people
One of the things I
admire
get a
me.
lot of joy out of is that.
It sparks joy in me. So there's this idea. There's this idea that like you keep your house clean in order that if any unexpected visitor ever came by, they would be impressed with me. Right? Like, or I keep it clean because I can't handle it if it's not clean. And I thought, but the whole point of this is like, you should be using it and looking through it and trying to get other people to look through it also, and not at you. At Christ.
This is a reflection of who I love.
Yes, because
like this is a reflection of why do I live my life like this, because of the great love that was shown me.
Yeah, and
not like it's not about me. It's about him.
Yeah, and beauty is powerful and compelling as a way to draw people.
I would just say that if you're thinking about that, all of the conflict with people in your home messing up what you've done to it is eliminated. Because if you're thinking of it, of this is just a reflection of God's great love to me, then you certainly can't get your skivvies in a knot over somebody missing the garbage can with their napkin.
Sure.
Right? You're like, this is not about me anyways. It's not a personal
having a
insult.
beautiful home really can be very powerful and compelling, but it's so easy for us to do this little pea and thimble thing where instead of pointing people to the beauty of holiness, the beauty of Christ, the beauty of redemption and so forth, we use it to point them to our own special skills at organizing.
Well, one thing is I'm super good at this. I have to say that I have. Okay, so once upon a time, my husband and I had a man stay with us for a night that we had no previous connection with.
Okay.
It was not someone that we were in tune with. And he said to us he wanted to stay up and talk and visit. So we were sitting there talking with someone we knew not. And it was women.
Might have been an angel, Rachel. Unawares.
Pretty sure not. But we were chatting with him. We did know him. I mean, it wasn't someone we picked up off the street. We knew of him. We were just putting him up.
Yeah.
And anyways, talking, and this whole issue of like your college education came up.
Yeah. Okay.
And he said, I have the hardest time with this. I still think it's so funny. He says, so what do you call yourself to me? And he was an older man. So he was like probably our dad's age. So he was an older man. He says, what do you call yourself? What do you say that you do? And I said, I would say I am a homemaker, like a mom and a homemaker. And he said, well, I don't want you to say that anymore.
You're like, oh,
and I was
if
like,
only
well,
you had told me
well,
earlier.
if only I knew the boss was in town. he's like, come again? Like, were you really telling me you don't want me to say this? And he said, no, I want you to say that. He said, this was part of a metaphor that he used. It was a good metaphor. It just was running amok. It was good. But he said, I want you to say that you are the chief executive assistant to the ambassador.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
To the ambassador?
That's Luke. He's the ambassador of the king. So he wanted Luke to be the ambassador. He wanted me to say that my husband is an ambassador, and I'm the chief executive assistant to the ambassador.
Let me whip up a business card real quick.
Well, exactly. I said, because this will just go over really well wherever I bring it up. And he said, so he told me he did not want me to say I was a homemaker anymore.
Oh
That's what he wanted me to state. He said, this is what I want you to say instead. And he told me that. And I sat there looking at him, and Luke was we're like sitting together. Luke's holding my hand, and I'm just looking at him. I said, well, that's not gonna happen. It was so funny though, because it was just like the chief executive assistant to the ambassador almost killed me dead. The idea of introing myself as his idea that the Christian home is like an embassy is an embassy of heaven in the world is spot on. Yeah. But going so far as to give yourself a new job title because of it is off topic.
The thing that makes me sad about that when I hear people do those versions of things is it feels so pretendy. It feels
it feels like we're trying to give ourselves a participation ribbon or something. We're saying I'm too embarrassed to say I'm a homemaker. Right. Because there's some connotations with that. So
I'm going to say I'm the CEO of the whatever, because that it's like you have a CEO job, so do I.
Yes, why? And why I too have risen to the top of my field.
And it just feels like a sad pretend of somebody trying to play dress-ups and pretend like
it's just awkward. It's super awkward. Yeah. But I did say later, he told me he also didn't want me to mop anymore.
Why?
Because I'm the chief executive assistant. I'm not the housekeeper. He was like, elevate yourself.
Who's the housekeeper?
I know I'd have to bring someone in. I was gonna have to bring in help. And I said, He was like, you, as the chief executive assistant to the ambassador, you are too qualified to be cleaning your own floors. Like and it was something about like your children need to see you. Okay, there's plenty of things about this that are not evil. It's like, it's perfectly fine to be saying in other cultures and in other places, the lady of the house is not the person cleaning the toilets.
But we don't live in Edwardian England.
We live where we live, and that's just the whole story.
Like, if only I was born...
He was like, no, you need to be bringing someone in to do that work for you while you focus on the work you need to be doing for the ambassador.
Wow.
It was a big scheme.
Well, this reminds me.
We just sat around being so awkward.
This reminds me of when a woman who also was married to a college president gave me her hot tip, her advice, and it was great. I relished it a lot because she was like, "Oh, you need to know this tip because you have kids. When you entertain at your house, tell the food staff to make dinner for your kids. That's such a time saver." I was like
wow. I'll leave myself a note. Hey, food staff. Hey, lady in charge of the food.
I laughed
Feed
and I
your
was
kids
like, well,
too.
My kids kind of are the food staff. Because it's like, we don't have.
It's
food
just
staff
so good.
That when I entertain at my house, the food staff shows up and puts the event on.
And you're like, one thing I remembered is feed my kids. It's so funny. But
it's kind of like, well, I'm not opposed to that if I lived in a world where that was a thing.
There's a number of things. You can be like caught up in that, like, oh wow, the Proverbs 31 woman would have had tons and tons of servants and help. So I doubt that it was the Proverbs 31 woman cleaning her own floors. But at the same time, we have a ton of staff.
She was getting up early, though, to feed her servants.
Yeah, but one thinks she was probably in a managerial position of this. But whatever, she was a busy lady. She handled it. But the thing that I'm wanting to say about this is that it's funny because you're like, yeah, they had servants, and you know what? We do too.
Yeah,
I have a washing machine. I have a dryer. I don't have a vacuum. Are you rubbing that in now? So, we have the dishwasher,
Rachel,
the washing machine.
I would like you to fix
the vacuum.
That.
Oh, I would too. It's like
I want you to stop.
See.
I want you to stop just treating your.
What do you
servants.
think? Do you think the embassy should have a vacuum?
I think
not?
the embassy is too important to not have a vacuum.
The embassy should absolutely have a vacuum. So, anyways, it's like, think of all those things that we do actually have. Like, we have the garbage truck comes by once a week for us. Like, we have access to a ton of help. And so it's not like
we have Amazon.
I'm going to say, this reminded me of a totally unconnected thought.
All right.
No, it's not totally. It's just skipping. It's skipping along.
Us from where we
are. It's a daisy chain thought.
Okay.
And that is that I just reminded myself of when people say, oh, if only we were in the simpler times where women didn't struggle with postpartum depression because we lived in a community where your mother was there to help you and where your people, like where we lived all together, so everyone was helping to bear this burden, and so
you died in childbirth,
and a newly delivered mother would have tons of time to just be sleeping and stuff because everybody else would be handling it.
Oh my! What make believe land is this?
But people think this about the olden days is that when we all lived in closer community, we didn't struggle with some of these problems because you weren't so isolated when you're dealing with it. Maybe that is the case in some small margin of area. But the thing I always wonder every time I see that is everybody says it. Like, it's like saying, well, I should have servants like the Proverbs 31 woman had. Yeah. It's like, well, why are we not reading that and being like, if only I could be a servant to someone? Because all we're doing is reading it from the perspective of who should have helped me. Instead of thinking,
wasn't there
if we went back to this plan, we're talking about mom's problems are also my problems now. Like, if we're going to be merging like this, it's not my burdens that are carried by all, and I don't ever have to touch anyone else's. That, to me, that's the thing. Is that, like,
but it's always easier to be really sacrificial and helpful in your make-believe than in real life.
Well, you're awesome at it, probably, because you're just full of the joy of the Lord.
You're generous. You're giving. You get up really early in order to do these things.
You wouldn't be, like, jealous of anyone.
Nope. Not in that world.
There aren't headaches in that world.
Not in the make-believe
There's
land.
never headaches.
And the trick is, remember Dad would always say this, people who always say, if I won the lottery, I would support all the missionaries and I would do this and that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if you're not generous with the money you do have, it does you no good to be generous with the money you don't have.
Yes, and you haven't shown anyone that you're actually going to do it.
Right.
Yeah. But I guess the thing I meant is that you can be like, yeah, I don't have help. Why do I have to do all this work? But you're like, and none of us are ever saying, like, why am I not the help for someone else?
Why was I not born a servant?
Man, why was I not born in this era when I would have been rising at dawn to go stock the coal fires in everyone's rooms?
Well, wasn't that some weird reality show?
Yes, so embarrassing.
I think you just told me about this. I don't think I watched it.
This was years ago that we watched I don't even remember what it's called, but they, like, just moved volunteers into an old English house. And they basically just gave them roles. Like, they were like, you'll be the lord of this manor and the lady, and then we'll get you a lot of servants. Yeah, and it turns out that didn't go so well. But the funniest part about it, the thing that I just thought was like, the heart of man. Yeah. Was it took about 7 hot seconds before the couple that were cast as the
earl and
the nobility. That couple was, like, snooty beyond all to all of the
weren't they saying kind of like, we were born in the wrong, like,
they're like,
century.
we were just born we were made for this life. Yeah. This is where we should have been. And it was so funny because they immediately
like this.
Like this. We should live here with all these servants that we refuse to acknowledge in the hall because we are better than they are.
Yeah.
So funny. It was sort of like whatever that horrible Stanford experiment was about the jail, the prison experiment. Yeah. It was like that one, wasn't it? About 30 minutes before the prison guards were
horrible. was really,
they had to call the whole
really
thing off.
disturbing.
It was like enough for a horror film.
Yeah.
Like everyone turns evil in 30 seconds,
Yep.
and it's just
Yep.
real bad. Anyways, it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
It was an interesting thing.
But then the servants turned out they didn't think they'd been born in the wrong century. They felt not.
they felt like
They felt not.
I love my
enchanted.
real life. I love
Yeah.
my real life
Uh-huh.
that is not me being a chambermaid.
Yeah.
That like, this is one of my less favorite jobs. Take me back to the mini mall where I work in a dumb.
Well, who was it that said somebody smart? Was it a founding father or maybe no, it wasn't. I can't remember.
somebody smart.
Somebody who said when you are imagining the ideal society,
Oh yeah, you got to
you
see
should
yourself as
not
the lowest.
know. Well, you should not know where in that society you would be born.
Right.
Because we all can imagine a perfect society in which we are the boss
We're the top.
cheese. We are the ones who get to
The
have
boss.
everyone minister to our every
Specifically,
whim.
The boss cheese.
And
I told
it's
that
like,
story in
I
this,
think
didn't
so,
I? I
about
hope so.
Moses
If I didn't
calling
tell you,
himself the boss
sorry, I
cheese.
accidentally gave away that authority and told him he was the boss cheese. I've never gotten it back. He's
Yeah.
been claiming
He
it.
just is the boss
Name it
cheese.
and claim it.
But the thing is if you can imagine the ideal society where everyone brought me meals so that I wasn't having postpartum depression,
right, and
then that's
someone-
very different than like imagine the ideal society where you're the unthanked volunteer.
I feel like we've probably talked about this, but all of the articles and blogs and articles and everything, we must have talked about this. But the title is always the 13 things you should never have said to me when I was
Right.
sad about not being married.
22 things
22
you ought
ways
to have
you
done.
should have ministered. 31 things the
When
church
I'm
is
crying.
doing wrong to the... You're like, oh my word.
Yeah.
And at half the time when you trouble yourself enough to look at the list, they contradict themselves.
Oh, they do.
So
They
they'll
do.
be like, number 3, take the baby immediately if you come to my house and tell me to go take a shower. And then they're like, number 7, never take the baby. You're like, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Plus the fact that it's the absolute worst to think that because you've been through something, you know what everyone going through that thing would need
No,
or want or
exactly.
desire. I have been morning sick. I get very morning sick. The last thing that I would ever desire, ever, would be for anyone to come over and start petting my
No.
head
No.
or holding a rag on my forehead
No.
or rubbing. I would just be like, get away from me.
Yeah.
And I
Uh-huh.
think, but there are people who really want that kind of
Yeah.
comfort. And I think you can't speak across personalities and
No.
lives that freely. But the reason I mentioned those was more that talking about like being born in the lowest society. It's like when you have a problem, when you have a situation, the real biblical response is not to write articles about how everyone else ought to have handled your
exactly.
trial, but to be thinking through what's the biblical way to bear this trial.
Yeah. Like
It's
shocker,
like it's not about what
shocker,
everyone
shocker.
else may or may not have
The
done.
thing is, we're so good at applying the scripture to everyone else.
it's that classic, isn't it? That classic
Yeah.
is it a cartoon that's like the husband and wife sitting across from each other at the table with their books open, and he's like reading something about being a good wife, and
Yeah.
she's reading like the manual for husbands.
Yeah, and
They're
it's
like studying up on what the other person
we're all
ought to
good
do
at it. And strangely, we were still good at it as a human race when Jesus told us
to
to
stop.
take the beam out of our own eye,
Yeah.
perhaps, before we start writing blog posts about the speckles in other people's eyes.
Speckles. No, it's so
just-
true.
It's
So
funny. It is funny because I feel like we're very, very quick to want everyone else to have
well,
to.
like these are the words you should never have used. This was a hurtful thing that you did. This is
Well, I
this.
just saw one the other day that was like 28 different things you should say instead of ever saying "stop crying," and I was like, but see, here's the
Stop crying though is so on
some,
point.
yeah,
some
and
of the time.
sometimes what really needs to be said is "stop crying." Other times,
Period.
yeah, and other times you really shouldn't say that. You should say, "Tell me all about it." That's fine. That's good in its certain contexts, but it's certainly not one of those lists to put on the fridge. In no circumstance should you ever say,
I'm just
"Stop
worried
crying."
about where you would be if you started thinking that was how you had to live. Like if
Yeah.
you're like,
Terrible.
oh my
And
word.
especially to yourself, you know what you ought to say to yourself a lot of the time? stop crying.
Oh, I thought you were saying that they told you to
No.
say something. No, to yourself it
No,
ought to
I
just
just
be,
mean, like,
or I'll open up a
it's
can of
kind of
something.
like, it's basically like, don't be self-indulgent. Like, say that to yourself.
Yeah.
If you're being self-indulgent, I don't mean it's ever wrong to cry. I just mean that, like, there's a way of just getting in there and wallowing in self-indulgence.
Man.
And if you won't say it to yourself, somebody else maybe is
Well-
going to need to.
Well, if you won't say it to yourself, imagine the poor fool who has to.
They'll be handed a list
It's-
of 28 things you should have said
It's
instead.
a good reminder for Christian women, though, to think in terms of giving yourself the hard counsel
Yes.
and doing that before your poor husband has to. Like,
Yeah.
like you can do it. You can, a lot of the time, all you need to do is get outside of your own little
And
self and
this-
look at yourself as though someone was just describing the situation
Yeah.
in the abstract.
Yeah. And oftentimes we act as if when emotions happen to us, they are things like a rainstorm or a windstorm that you have no control
Right.
over. It just came. The emotion
There's
came.
nothing. It's like, well, sometimes
And-
you could turn off the bathtub faucet and pull the plug. Like, your house doesn't have to be flooding right now. You could
Yeah.
go stop that nonsense. Yeah.
And the thing is that is in fact what one of the fruits of the spirits is, which is self-control, which means that you do have a say in some of these things, like actually
Yeah, you have
being
a
able
say
to,
in not listening to
right,
certain
being able to
things.
govern your spirit, or at least pull it back onto the straight and narrow when it veers
Right,
off.
and I think practicing really paying attention to your own, like, like in poker, tells, that people have tells, paying attention to your own tells of how am I starting to spin this in a different way? Like, am I lying? Yes, I am, because I'm running through it in my mind trying to find the right phrasing of what might justify this. Like, or what might, or what is this? Instead of calling your own bluff every time you see yourself starting to do that.
And we often think that I felt this way, which means I needed to express it, because otherwise, what would have happened? And it's like, well,
one thing is maybe you
could
wouldn't
repent.
be leaving all this emotional carnage behind you. It was on my mind to say that.
it
so
was
I
on my
did.
mind. So
like,
what I did was
sometimes the best
went and
thing of
spread it
all,
hither
oh
and
my
thither.
word, the best thing of all is just to discipline the attitude, or like whatever trouble you may be having. That the spin control thing is an interesting thing though, and when I remember, I think I wrote about this somewhere, but when I had the twins, when the twins were babies and my big girls were barely toddlers, so it was a wild time, and I saw in myself that saying I was overwhelmed was a tell. It was me giving myself the freedom, like I was allowing myself a category of I don't feel like handling this right now.
Yes.
And when I would say I was overwhelmed, who in their right mind would tell me that I had no right to be overwhelmed?
Right.
Like, I had 4, like, seriously, it would have been, bless my husband, because he has never been afraid of me. Thank the Lord for that.
Isn't that good?
That even at such times as that, he would not hesitate to tell me that I clearly was just rocking a bad attitude. But all that, like, that aside, I'm saying that I realized, and even he's always been very honest with me about that, but even he had not known that me saying I was overwhelmed was me making excuses for my own self. And when I realized it, I was like, this is bad.
Yeah.
This is dark.
Yeah.
And the thing that felt like jumping off a high dive was telling him that I knew that now. And I told Mom too. I think I probably told you. I told anyone that talking to I may have said that to. So I had no recourse. I could never go back. I was like, snap.
Yep.
I'm going to have to cut myself off at all of my outlets.
Yeah.
The people who would not have been like, Rachel, Come
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Like, all of them are not people who pander to me, but it still was.
No, but it
if
would have
I'd been
been
like,
very
I'm just super
uncharitable.
overwhelmed, you would be like, it'll be okay, hang in
I'm
there.
sorry.
And nobody would have just been like, oh, shut up.
Yeah,
You're not
stop.
either. Like,
Stop
deal
being
with it.
overwhelmed.
Or, like, just thank the Lord and roll up your sleeves and quit fussing. Like,
Wow.
they wouldn't have. So I'm just saying that was an example of something that I saw in myself of like, this is the tell. This is me re-spinning the story. When I really just have a bad attitude, I'm spinning it as the situation is too intense for me. And I was like, I don't think I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. And it's good to start being cynical.
Well, I dare
of
you
yourself.
all. I dare you all to find something like that and then kill all of your opportunities for using it.
It's a good idea.
It was
to just
bizarrely spiritual exercise. On that
like
one.
what do I find myself telling my husband all the time? Like what
Which
are
is
some
super crazy, and I'm just
things,
super not.
Well,
yeah.
things that would fall into the under the general heading of complaints. All the things that are
excuses.
wrong, excuses or complaints.
Like,
That's a good.
or
That's an
like
interesting
like
exercise.
one thing that I would say with women does not. I mean, this is a difficult thing to say probably, but think about it. It's hypothetical. What are the things that nobody else can check for you? Do you really have a bad headache, or are you just annoyed? Do you know what I mean?
true.
Are you really, what are the things that you could say? I'm just hormonal right now because of something. And is like, well, is that really the problem, or is it the sin you fell into?
Yeah.
Like, is it this? And those are the kinds of things that you might tell your husband, or you might use repeatedly through your life. It's like fallback. I just don't feel really good. Might be code for I decided I want to go lay on the bed and watch Netflix while everyone does something else. Like, I'm just saying, look at things that's like, is that totally 100% honest? Or is that an unhealthy indulgence in some way? Yeah. And if it is, then go kill it off so you can't ever do it again. Yeah. Because that is a bold and valiant move. It's wild, actually. It really was funny. Because it's not just vulnerable to tell someone you were doing that. It's vulnerable because you know you can never do it again.
Right. Right.
You're like, and it sounds so little and petty. Like that. Why would I have wanted to say that? I don't know. It was still good for me. So that's the challenge.
Good. That's good. Okay, we need to have a tip. We
Yeah.
gotta go.
What's your tip?
You have a tip. You said you have
Oh,
one. I haven't thought of a good one.
Okay, see if you can drum one up. My rule of life is that when you feel behind on life in any way, just try to get ahead on Christmas. I'm just always, usually, I have ordered wrapping paper for Christmas sometimes in the middle of summer.
There you
when
go.
I'm like, know what I could do that would really be killing it. But the best tip is for me is 2-gallon Ziploc bags. The big Ziploc bags. And I put a box or a bag up in the top of my closet, and I have a 2-gallon Ziploc bag for each kid. I write their name in Sharpie on it. And then as I find little doodads and things for stocking stuffers, I buy them and I throw them in their Ziploc bag in the box. Mm-hmm. What makes this system brilliant is that it used to be, before I had this idea, it used to be that I would have a stash of stuff, but you didn't know really what thing was for. And that's just like a big nightmare of tangled stuff. Yeah. And so it's way better for me because I can very quickly throw all the bags out on the bed, look at who has nothing, who has something,
who still
and
needs
then
something.
shove it all back in the bag and put it away. Yeah. And then the 2-gallon bags actually fit. That's like, if they're not too stuffed, that's like the size of our stockings. So I know how full the bag should be in relation to the stocking.
That's good.
That's very easy. And this time of year, there's a lot of like back to school supplies that are now on clearance, like little like pencil bags or fun pens or things that are, and they're like great stocking stuffers.
That's awesome. So my Christmas tip, I know, will turn your nose up at.
I don't.
Yeah,
I
you
don't.
Do. Yeah, you do.
Just a little.
Yeah, a little bit. I can see it going up already, and you
well,
don't even
because
know.
I'm the tipster of the 2-gallon bags.
I know.
That's the kind of tip I go for.
I use your tip. I have taken your tip to
All right,
heart.
go ahead. Tell the people.
No, I like to. Of course I do like to make labels. It's terrible. I have the packaging side of me that gets involved.
The packaging side is always involved.
It is, but here's the thing. It's hard with 5 kids. Well, you have even more. To keep track of how many presents you have for each person. You know what I mean? It's like your
This
it's
is
like
not
your
what I
gallon
thought
thing.
we were talking
No,
about.
it's like your gallon Ziploc thing. You know,
Yeah.
like you find out you've been buying all one kid's stockings and forgot
Yes,
about three others.
I should have mentioned the Manage Christmas app.
Oh yeah, I didn't love that last year. But anyway, I like to keep a notebook in my purse. But anyway, I will design a fun label, and I'll just print them off at the beginning where I have like 6 labels that say Knox, 6 that say Jemima, 6 that say Belle, 6 that say Hero, you know, like that. And they're cute, and I try and have them channel some kind of festive look because I bought a huge, like, till the world ends, I will never run out of this huge roll of brown craft paper. And I have it on a big industrial dispenser that I got from Uline.
I have the big roll of white paper.
I think I'm gonna order white this year.
Blue and white.
I think I'm gonna order white because I do love it. You just pull it out, tear it off.
For years, I had red and white polka dot on one side and
Yeah,
red and
it
white
was really
striped on the
cute.
other side,
It
and
was
I used
cute.
that until we couldn't see it anymore.
And see, this one I had last year. I bought the brown craft.
Oh,
because,
I would like plaid.
yeah, that'd be cute. But see, I kind of like it when all the gifts sort of coordinate under the tree. I think that's fun. Anyway, so I have a big thing of brown craft, and I might use that again this year. I don't know. But as I get the gifts, I can just wrap it and stick Knox's label on there. But it's very easy for me without going and rummaging around under the tree to try and remember what I have under there or
Right.
how many do I have under there
Right,
for him.
yeah.
I can look at my sheet and see, oh, I just have, 2 more for Knox.
That
but I
wouldn't
have
work
6
in my
more.
house because I would have to try to keep track of how many of the labels Moses had taken off and put on
Oh,
something
see,
else.
I cut them apart and I put them in a little box and stick it.
Yeah,
with-
but so I keep I like the Manage Christmas app because I keep a list, so if I have an idea for someone, I'll throw it in their list, and then you can mark it as bought, wrapped, like you can.
I just use one of those little disposable-y sort of notebooks.
Yeah.
And write in it, but it works basically
Similar
the same.
concept. The thing about this is that when I order tons of things on Amazon, when the packages come in the day, I keep at Christmas season, I bring my roll of wrapping paper upstairs and I have it all out. So when I open the box when the kids are at school, I wrap everything in the box.
Yeah, and see, and
I
I
wrap
just
it, label it. I just write their name with a Sharpie on top of it, and I wrap it.
And see, I just like having the labels because it's like the 2-gallon Ziploc for me, where it helps me see who I have more to buy for. And I even number them because I usually try to keep things like in the same general vibe, like so.
Yeah. You're like bathrobes for everyone.
Bathrobes, or
like,
everybody gets a book for this
or
gift,
everybody
or everybody
gets
gets
new
an
outfit,
or everybody gets whatever. And so I will have like Knox number 1, Jemima number 1, whatever. So they all open their
number ones.
Their
together.
number ones at the same time. So, because sometimes it can be very awkward if one kid got the big, huge gift and somebody else got, like, here, have some batteries. You know what I mean? It's
you
just
got
kind of
me a frisbee.
where it just kind of keeps things a little more orderly that way. But anyway, it's not like I don't worry about it if they're slightly uneven. It's just for me that helps keep a handle on how many to buy for. But look at
We
how
should
long
go.
we've talked. I gotta
All
go.
right, time's up.
Have fun, guys.
We'll talk to you another time.
Bye.
New St. Andrews College thanks you for listening.